Welcome to the Creepy Villain MMA show for like the fourth or fifth time. I've been messing up a lot today. I am your host, Creepy Uncle Nick. Dylan the Villain will not be with me today. I'm sorry, I'm really coughy. I must have a cold or something like that, but I'm really coughing a lot. So this is going to be a huge show because we're going over to stacked UFC 139 card. We're going to go over the Fox live on Fox Fights, and for the first time, we're going to have an interview with a UFC fighter. And I'll give you a little hint, he's a heavyweight fighter. But let's get this party started. UFC 139 is Mauricio Shogun, who, as you can see here, breastfeeding, who's 20-5 but 4-3 in the UFC. He's got the former Pride middleweight light heavyweight champion. Is the Pride middleweight Grand Prix champion. His most recent wins are against Forrest Griffin, where he makes Forrest look stupid, Lyoto Machida, and Chuck Liddell. His losses are to John Jones, Lyoto Machida, and Forrest Griffin. He'll be going against the Strikeforce light heavyweight champion, Dan Henderson, who's 28-8. He's also the former Pride middleweight champion, former Pride welterweight champion, 2005 Pride welterweight Grand Prix champion, and UFC 17 middleweight tournament champion. He's got big wins over Fedor Emelianenko, Rafael Cavalcante, Babalu Bisping, and Rich Franklin. His losses are to Jake Shields, Anderson Silva, and Rampage. In this fight, I'm going to go with Dan Henderson because I think Dan Henderson has got better wrestling, better cardio. Shogun's cardio sucks. He gassed in the first round against John Jones, and he's got really heavy hands, so I'm going to go with Dan Henderson. Next fight is a living legend, Vanderlei Silva, who has been doing this a lot lately, laying on his back and beating canvas or someone's fist. He's 33-11 with one draw and one no contest. He's the former Pride middleweight champ, 2003 Pride middleweight tournament winner, and he's 2-4 since his return to the UFC with wins over Bisping and Jardine, and he's got losses to Lieben, Rich Franklin, and Rampage. He will be going against this man, Kung Lee, who's 7-1 in MMA. He's the former Strikeforce middleweight champion, former International Kickboxing Federation light heavyweight champion, and he's 16-0 in kickboxing with wins over Scott Smith, Frank Shamrock, and he's got one loss to Scott Smith. On this fight, I'm going to go with Kung Lee because Vanderlei Silva is awesome, and I really like him, but his chin sucks, and I think Kung Lee's going to exploit that. Speaking of sucky chins, the next fight is Uriah Faber, who is 25-5. He's the former King of the Cage bantamweight champion, former WEC featherweight champ. Oh shit, that's not Uriah. Hold on. There he is. Those guys could have been twins. Got big wins over Eddie Wineland, Takeya Mizugaki, and Jens Pulver. He's got losses to Dominic Cruz, Jose Aldo, and Mike Brown. He will be going against this guy here, Brian Bowles, who's 10-1. He's the former bantamweight champion for the WEC. He's got big wins over Takeya Mizugaki, Demisio Page, and Miguel Torres, and he's got one loss to Dominic Cruz. This is a fight that I can see going either way, but I'm going to go with Uriah Faber because his wrestling, his cardio is outstanding. He's fast, good jiu-jitsu, even though he's got little T-Rex arms, his stand-up's pretty decent. Next fight is journeyman Martin the Hitman Catman, who's 17-5, but he's on a 2-fight losing streak. He's got wins over Paulo Thiago, Jacob Volkman, and Carlos Condit. And his losses are to Dirty Diego Sanchez, Jake Shields, and Paul Daly. He will be going against Rick the Horror Story. He's 13-4 with wins over Thiago Alves, Johnny Hendricks, Dustin Hazlett, and he's got his loss to Charlie Brenneman and John Hathaway. In this fight here, I'm going to go with Martin Kampmann. I think he's a taller fighter with longer reach. I think. I don't know that for 100% fact, but Rick the Horror Story, every time I see him, looks like he's also suffers from Matt Serra syndrome with his little T-Rex arms. Martin Kampmann's also got a more well-rounded skill set, so I'm going to go with him. He's been in big fights and going against some really tough competition, so I'm going to go with him. Next fight, Stephan Bonnar, who's 16-7. He's got wins over Igor Pakarak, or however you say his name, Krzysztof Szysinski, and Eric Red Schaefer, and his losses are to Krzysztof Szysinski, Mark Coleman, and John Jones. He will be going against Kyle Kingsbury, who is 11-2. He's got a 4-fight win streak with wins over Fabio Maldonado, Ricardo Romero, Jared Hammond, and his losses are to Dirty Tom Lawler and Tony Lopez. With that fight there, I'm gonna wind up going with Stephan Bonnar just because he's been in more big fights and he's got the experience and I think it's just better skill set. He is slowing up a little bit, so I can see Kyle Kingsbury being the more athletic person and taking the fight, but I think experience is going to play a role on this one. Also on this fight card, Ryan Bader, who just fought for a number one contender fight, is looking to bounce back after a two-fight skid against Jason Brills. And Miguel Torres, who was once considered one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world, former WEC champion, is trying to get back to his champion ways against Nick Pace. And that's not even on Spike. That's just pre-Williams on Facebook. That's how stacked this card is. UFC on Fox was this Saturday. That saw the heavyweight champion Cain Velasquez get knocked out by Junior Dos Santos, who is now the new heavyweight champion, in like a minute and 20 seconds by a punch to the ear. I actually thought Cain was going to win. Dylan the Villain picked this right. He got lucky. But a lot of people were complaining because it didn't last very long and they didn't think it was very action-packed, but I loved it. Any free fight, especially a heavyweight title fight, that I get to watch for free that ends in the first round via knockout, I'm up for it. The fight that stole the show was Clay Guida versus Ben Henderson. That one went to unanimous decision. That showed Ben Henderson winning, and he got to face Frankie Edgar in Japan. Pat Barry will be going against Christian Morecraft. Another fighting option, Anthony Pettis will be going against Joe Lozon in UFC 144. Eric Koch will be going against Dustin Poirier, and Yushin Okami will be going against Tim Boetsch. All right, now the big interview. Please welcome live via Google, former UFC heavyweight champion, former WWE champion, Brock Lesnar. Woo! Thanks for joining the show, Brock. Brock, I just got to get this off the question really quick. This is a dispute between me and Dylan the Villain. Whose arms are bigger, mine or yours? Alright, well, you didn't really need to call me a bitch, but whatever. On to some MMA talk before we go back to more fun stuff. With all the recent acquisitions with Alistair Overeem in the heavyweight division, I'm feeling Bigfoot Silva's talking about coming back to the UFC. Daniel Cormier was talking about coming to the UFC. You got Roy Nelson, Frank Mir, all these great fighters in there. Shane Carwin. What fighter do you think represents the biggest opposition towards you? Really, Roy Nelson. If you ever had to fight Roy Nelson, what would you do? You would motorboat his tits? That's ridiculous. Oh, jeez. Brock, out of all the tattoos on your back, enough with the MMA stuff, with all the tattoos that you have, you got the big one on your back, you got the one on your shoulder, and the, of course the penis on your chest. It's not a penis. Which one is your favorite tattoo? Your sexy sword. Alright. I don't really think it's that sexy, but so be it. And Brock, now I know Dylan's going to be really upset that he's missing this interview, but if you could do me a favor and do your best impersonation of Dylan the Villain that you can possibly do, could you do that for me? Wow, that was him right on the head. Brock, thanks for joining the show, and we look forward to your next fight versus Alistair Overeem. Good luck. Well, and that will do it for this episode of the Creepy Villain MMA show. Please look us up on Facebook. We're going to be going to the fights this Friday to see Sergio Pettis' fight. And please leave comments. Look us up on YouTube, and we're still working on this whole website thing. So Dylan the Villain has his first college wrestling meet this Saturday. Yeah, I said college meet. That's disgusting. The boys at Penn State would love it, though. And so let's wish him luck. Good luck. Later, guys.